Tom, I'm curious with, having gone through the process of Notre Dame as a quarterback yourself, what do you see out of Phil as far as kind of his mental makeup to be able to handle not just being a quarterback on the field, but just what comes along with being sort of a big man on campus at plays like this?
Yeah, I think when you talk about Phil, the mental makeup of him might be the most impressive thing. And you touch on the big man on campus part. He's been a 4-year starter at basketball as a freshman year on, at a really good high school program. He started in football for the last 3. So, he's dealt with that. I watched him play hoops this recruiting cycle, and he goes into a Central Catholic in a great atmosphere and has to deal with the pressure of being the guy that everyone knows, the one that the student section's chirping at. And you see his competitive fire and his will to win. And when you break him down mentally, that's probably the most impressive traits he has. He's got a great support group in his family. He's had great coaches throughout his high school career, so they've taught him the right way. And so when you worry about him coming in here and mentally fitting in, that's the least concern you have, because he is such a strong-willed individual. He's really a throwback. When you talk about recruiting a kid, he's all about football and, wanting to help with recruiting and wanting to get a grasp of the offense and do things the right way. He's not caught up in stars, camps, numbers, things like that. I mean, he's been a pleasure to recruit because he's been pretty low maintenance in terms of, hey, he just wants to learn football and to get to know his teammates and to familiarize himself with Notre Dame, the university. And, he's been a pleasure to work with. And I can't speak highly enough about his family. His parents are very involved, care a lot, and do a great job of raising him. He's a humble kid who, in this day and age doesn't need to be humble. I mean, so it's when a kid chooses, to be humble like that, it really speaks volumes to who he is.
Coach, what are some things you learned, maybe 1 or 2 things that really stood out this first year of you getting on the practice field, working with the guys, and maybe caught you a little bit off guard, like, wow, I didn't really view it from this perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think just, the daily interactions, how involved you are with everything they do in their life. I mean, academically what's going on, socially what's going on, if there's a family issue. So I think when you look at it from being more than just a coach, but, a mentor and someone that they can look to and lean on, that's something that surprised me this year, when it comes up. And, something that I really enjoyed, because you build a really, great relationship, with your players and being someone that they can trust and come to with really anything. And I think, my situation here, being that it wasn't too long ago that I was a player, and I really think that gives us a unique angle to be able to talk about things that come up, in school and come up with just handling the different pressures it takes to be the quarterback here. So that's something that was a little surprising, that, just the comfort level they had to come to me with everything. The next part is, and this isn't surprising, but you face ups and downs throughout a year. And, I'd be the first one to tell you that. But I think just, the way you handle that with your teammates, it's just as important, as a coach, that you handle it the right way, as the player. And I think that's something I learned, throughout the whole year is, hey, you always need to stay positive, to give them, the best outlook. So even when things aren't going perfect, they know that you have their back and that you're in their corner. And I think that's something, you knew there were going to be challenges, but how you react and how you interact and how you keep them up, really makes a difference in their day-to-day interactions.
Now, as a player, you were an even-keel guy, that you had ups and downs, and you tried not to get overly emotional about stuff, but were you able to do that as a coach?
Yeah, the even-keeled thing, it's always kind of followed me in my career, and it's not always been the case. I mean, I gave that perception because you have to be at this position. You have to, it can't be a roller coaster. You need to be consistent and steady. But, when it comes to just, practice or, in the meeting room or outside of, of the game day, there is fire and there is passion. And that's something that, I try to resonate with the guys in the room. And I, as a player, you know, a lot of guys have always said, hey, you're so even keeled, so even keeled. But if you talk to some of my closest teammates or my closest friends, you know, they'll be the first one to tell you that's false and, you know, the temper and all that. But, you know, with these guys, it's definitely more important than even as when I was a player to be even keeled, because you need to be the same person every day. When you step into that meeting room, they need to know who they're getting and who to expect. And, you know, my biggest thing was, you know, to be consistent for them so that there was never any surprises. And, you know, I think they reacted well to that. You know, I want to keep pushing them, you know, in their competitive fire and their energy levels and continue to grow them that way. And I think they're taking strides. And, you know, I think in year two, for two kids that, you know, really hadn't played a lot of snaps here at Notre Dame, I think year two, you'll see, you know, more of a step forward in that direction just because of the comfort level and the experience they learned this year.
Well, I wasn't in your dorm room.
Right. Right. No.
You walk through these doors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the best way to, you know, to handle yourself, and it's the only way. But, you know, throughout the week in game planning, or, you know, if we go play pickup basketball, that's a whole nother side that, you know. But I think that, you know, you're just trying to be the same person every day. And, you know, that's a lesson I try to teach them, is not to act out of their comfort level and to be, you know, a consistent person so your teammates know who they're getting every single day.
Is recruiting different today than it was when you went through it?
It is. And it's crazy because it wasn't
that long ago.
Right, it was 10 years ago, you know, 9 years ago when I was getting recruited. And, you know, social media has moved quickly. I mean, that's no doubt. I mean, Twitter wasn't out when I was being recruited. You know, there was no texting when I was being recruited. I mean, there was no Instagram. None of that stuff was around. So that's changed recruiting, you know, vastly. You know, I think that it's you, like I talked about Phil, you find someone that only cares, he cares about the right things. He cares about football, he cares about his teammates, he cares about being the best individual he can be. You know, you find a lot of kids now that get caught up in the recruiting, and you find a lot of coaches that get caught up in some of the recruiting stuff. So I think when you find a kid like Phil, or you find individuals that are in this class that, you know, do it the right way and care about it the right way, it's a breath of fresh air. You know, I really enjoyed getting on the road this week, meeting a lot, or these past couple of weeks, meeting a lot of high school coaches, seeing a lot of different areas, and you talk to them, and they do such a great job of instilling the right benefits in their kids. But yeah, recruiting with just social media has changed it, you know, vastly over the last 10 years.
Tom, what will be your main, when you get an opportunity to coach Jurkovec, your main points of emphasis with him that are specific to Kid? What do you feel he, you know, might need to improve on?
Yeah, you know, I think Phil's, you know, maybe his best, like I talked about his mentality, but, you know, when you look at him as an athlete, he'll be the most impressive guy you see. I mean, you step on the basketball court and he's the best athlete on the court by a mile. You know, guards the other team's best player, moves well. You watch him on the football field, same thing. I mean, he is going to be athletically, you know, there isn't a lot he can't do. So obviously the first step for a young quarterback is always the mental part. So the first thing you got to do is you got to get a benchmark on where he's at, you know, in terms of recognizing coverage. You know, how well does he learn things? How well is he able to retain things in the meeting room and translate them to the field? So that's always the biggest leap. And I've said this, you know, a number of times. When people talk about the speed of the game changing, it's really not the physical part. It's really the mental aspect, especially at the quarterback position. You know, if you're no lineman, it's a little bit different, you know, because of the physicality. But at the quarterback, the game starts to slow down for you when you mentally start to be able to grasp things. So I think for him, the first thing is, hey, where are we mentally and where do we need to improve there? You know, physically, I think, you know, maybe a little more consistent, you know, on an every throw basis, you know, mechanically and accuracy is something that everyone needs to strive for, but I think we'll continue to push for him. But like I said before, there's not going to be a whole lot he can't do. You know, the first thing is, hey, where are you at mentally? And the second thing is, hey, let's start to work on our consistency when it comes to, you know, throwing the ball down the field.
Well, you obviously you've gone through it at quarterback, again, playing young as a quarterback on the collegiate level. What is it like for a guy going from high school and then having to deal with the coverages that they face on this level?
Yeah, I mean, it's different. You know, I think, to be honest with you, like we talk about recruiting, high school kids with all the, you know, Elite 11 and all this stuff that's going on now, they really do a good job of talking football and talking coverage. And so I think guys are coming in a little more prepared than they get credit for. You know, the high school coaches do a great job of focusing on, you know, the mental aspect of the game. So, and you can tell you come from a good program, you know, in the high school level, you have a pretty good grasp of coverage and what's going on. You know, Coach Kaz, you know, at Pine Richland does a great job, you know, with Phil and that whole, you know, program. You don't go 16-0 and win a state championship without a great coach. So, and I've talked to Phil about all this stuff, and he's sharp. I mean, he's a smart kid who's willing to learn. Now you just have to expand his library. So in high school, you see cover 4, you'll see man, and you know, you see a couple coverages. Now, hey, they're playing 2 Tampa, or they're playing, you know, 3 cloud. They're doing all these different things that you don't see at high school because defenses don't run it. So he has the benchmark of, hey, I've learned this, I know these coverages, but now let's expand the library, because you're going to see a number of different things.
Where you look at it, you don't know what.
Right, you know, Coach, I recognize what's going on, but I don't know the name of it, right? And so that's where you teach them, and you know, the repetitions help, and that's something you do in the summer. You get, you know, an opportunity to watch film, you know, leading up to camp, and you give them projects, and you have the older guys help them through it, and you know, you just continue to work them, and so when they see it, it becomes second nature.
Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
Coach, we didn't get to see any of Avery this year, but Coach Kelly mentioned him in December as having some good practices
Yep.
leading up to the bowl game. And so what are we going to see in the spring and maybe next fall or in training camp from Avery?
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't want to talk too much about the spring and fall just because, you know, today's more about, you know, signing day and recruiting, but, you know, Avery's done a really nice job of, you know, taking those steps throughout, you know, fall, and then when he got his opportunity more in the winter and the bowl practices of being able to go out there and translate it. I mean, a freshman year, when you're a quarterback and you have to redshirt, it's hard for a lot of guys because you're used to being the guy, and when you have to, you know, sit him down for a little bit, it's tough. But he did a great job mentally getting himself ready for those practices in the winter, and he was able to go out there and execute the offense and move the team and play at a high level. So I think, and you watch him, you know, work out this winter, he's taken another step in his, you know, his comfort level. Like we talked about those other guys learning a lot in year one. It's the same thing for Avery. You know, he's able to attack these winter workouts a little bit different than he did in the summer because he's that much more comfortable. And you know, I'm really excited for Avery to get more work this spring. I'm really excited to see what he can do. You know, when he's given more reps, you know, I think he does a great job of, you know, just moving the offense. You know, he understands, hey, here's my easy throw. I'm going to take it, and we're going to take a completion and keep going. And so I think he has a great understanding of how to run the show. And now it's, hey, let's develop these other characteristics. Let's develop these other traits and this deeper understanding of what we're trying to do offensively.
Banged up at the end of the year. He didn't dress for the bowl game.
Yeah, he tweaked. You know, during the preparation, he tweaked something leading up to it. Nothing that's lingering or nothing that's, you know, affecting him now.